Mochi, the Mochi Queen. Okay, so Miss Bergstrom just let you listen to 7 and 8, and now we're going to look at chapter 9. The Long Wait. The house smelled sweet and the air felt wet. My aunties laughed and chattered in the kitchen. Metal bowls clanked against one another. The woman carried big bowls filled with hot rice from the kitchen out to the backyard. Dad still hadn't come back to tell me I could help. Mochi Tusky would start very soon. Now that the rice was made, I hopped around the room, full of nerves and energy. Waiting was hard. I played catch with my cousins. They giggled like they were the happiest people on earth. They were definitely the happiest people in this room. Mean Cousin Eddie walked into the living room, brushed his hands off like he'd done something important. He had probably only washed his hands after using the bathroom. At least, I hoped he washed his hands. "I see you're with the babies, where you belong," he said. I didn't remember to count to 10. "In a minute, I'll be outside doing your job for you," I said. Eddie's mouth gaped open like Mom's breakfast sardine. Then he bent over laughing. "You wish," he said with a snort. "Only men can pound mochi. You're a weakling. When you're 10, you'll be in the kitchen with your sister." The ball popped out of Cassie's hands and rolled over to Eddie. He nudged it towards me with his foot. "See ya, Jasmine P." I forgot to count to 10 again. My foot flew out from under me and kicked the ball. Smack! It pounded Eddie in the back. He didn't get a chance to yell at me because Mom beat him to it. "Jasmine Tagachi, what are you doing?" "Getting the ball for the twins," I said. I leaned over to pick it up. Eddie cocked his head at me with his eyes narrowed. I waited for him to say something mean, but instead he went back outside. Mom nodded at me. "Good job, Jasmine." But I wasn't doing a good job. I wasn't doing the job I wanted to do at all. Where was Dad with his answer? Suddenly, I heard the hammer smack against stone. Oh no! Mochi Tusky had started without me. I tossed the ball with Cassie and Leo, back and forth. I wished and wished Dad would come back in to tell me I could help. But instead of Dad, Uncle Jimmy walked in. "Eddie tells me you want to pound mochi," Uncle Jimmy said. My insides puffed with hope. "You know, that's our family tradition for the boys to pound mochi and the girls to roll," Uncle Jimmy said with a kind smile. "We've been doing it like this since I was a boy." All the hope leaked out of me. "But I know how you feel," Uncle Jimmy said. "I'm younger than your dad. I had to wait 3 whole years before I could help. It felt terrible to watch him pound mochi when I couldn't. If he was trying to make me feel better, it wasn't working." "I was glad I waited, though," Uncle Jimmy went on, "because I don't think I would have been much help. Sometimes waiting makes the thing you're waiting for more special. I had already waited 8 years. That was a long time, and I've been waiting forever for Dad to tell me his answer. Besides, when you're 10, you'll be happy making mochi with your big sister." Uncle Jimmy said, "Maybe you can bring the twins outside to watch right now." That seemed like the worst idea in the world. Why would I want to watch people doing the thing I wanted most to do? Dad came into the room. "So, Jasmine," he said, "tell me why you should be allowed to pound mochi." I stood tall. "Because I'm a bigger girl than people think. I follow directions, like when Mom tells me to clean my room." I didn't tell Dad about how I didn't do a good job helping Sophie sweep. Dad nodded. "And I'm helpful. I'm going to help Mrs. Reese paint her shed. I would definitely do that if it meant I could pound mochi." "It's hard work, Jasmine," Uncle Jimmy said. I ran over to Cassie and lifted her up. "I'm strong," Leo shouted. "Jasmine's super strong." Cassie wiggled and slipped out of my grip and landed with a thunk on the floor. Thankfully, she laughed. Dad and Uncle Jimmy looked at me. Then they looked at each other. "Jim," said Dad, "maybe it's time to break tradition." Uncle Jimmy smiled and nodded. "You can pound mochi," Dad said to me. I felt like shouting and jumping. Instead, I wrapped my arms around Dad's legs and squeezed. "Thank you." Dad hugged me and said, "Wow, you really do have strong arms." That made me feel even stronger. This was it. I was getting my wish. Breaking the rules. Uncle Jimmy was right about one thing. When you wait and wait for something, it really is wonderful when you get it. At least that's how I felt as I walked out with Dad and Uncle Jimmy. Uncle Ray carried his freshly pounded mochi over to the women. Jasmine Tagachi, Mom said from the table. What are you doing out here? Dad walked over to talk with Mom. Mom's forehead wrinkled. I wished I could hear what they were saying. I watched for clues. Dad was smiling while Mom wasn't exactly smiling. She didn't look mad either, but when Mom glanced at me, I straightened my shoulders. I held my breath as I waited for a sign. Finally, just when I thought my lungs would explode, Mom nodded and I let my breath out in a whoosh. She turned and spoke. To the aunties and Abichan. Everyone at the mochi table looked over at me. Auntie Laurie gave me a thumbs up. Sophie stuck her tongue out. This was the first time ever I was breaking a rule. Well, maybe not the first time. I wasn't supposed to watch TV before I finished my homework. I only did that once, or maybe twice. I did eventually get my homework done, though I wasn't supposed to eat cookies before dinner, but I only did that a few times. Okay, so maybe this wasn't the first time I was breaking a rule, but this was the first time I was breaking a rule with Mom and Dad, with Mom and Dad's permission. It felt great. Cousin Anna waved to me as she went inside. She was going to watch the twins until after I got my turn. Uncle Jimmy stepped up to the USA with the hammer over his shoulder. Steam from the cooked rice drifted up into the air. Uncle Jimmy gripped the hammer with both hands and swung it down into the rice. Thwack, thwack, thwack. He smacked the hammer into the big stone bowl. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The steamed rice became a lumpy, bumpy blob. After Uncle Jimmy hit the mochi 3 times, Uncle Ray reached into the USA to turn the mochi to keep it from sticking to the bowl. Uncle Jimmy hit the mochi again. Uncle Ray dipped his hands into a bowl of water before spinning the mochi another time. Thwack, 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 flip, thwack, 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 flip. Did anyone ever get hit by the hammer? I glanced at Eddie, who stood far away from me. He pretended I wasn't there. I watched Uncle Jimmy and Uncle Ray pound and flip and pound. It was taking forever. I sat down. Over at the table, Mom and Obichan pulled pieces of the giant ball of mochi and passed them down to my aunties and cousins. Mochica rice flour was sprinkled across the table like snow so the mochi wouldn't stick to the tablecloth. Sophie's hands were white with rice flour as she took her piece of mochi and rolled it between her hands. When it was round like a ball, she flattened it a little with her palms and placed it on a big tray. Sophie was already doing her job. When would I get to do mine? Both of the uncles finally stopped pounding when Uncle Jimmy took the big lump of mochi over to Mom. Eddie picked up the hammer. He rested it on his shoulder until Uncle Jimmy came back and stood next to the USA. Dad dumped a glob of rice into the stone bowl. I paid close attention as Eddie lifted the hammer and dropped it onto the rice. Thwack! Eddie pounded the rice 2 more times. Thwack, thwack! Uncle Jimmy flipped the mochi. When his hand was safely out of the way, he nodded to Eddie. Thwack! Flip! Eddie swung the hammer easily, but he pounded slower than the uncles. After his dad flipped the ball of rice again, Eddie raised the hammer like he was tired. A seed of worry formed in my tummy. Thwack! Flip! Thwack! Flip! Thwack! Flip! Uncle Jimmy took the hammer from Eddie. He patted Eddie on the back and congratulated him. Great job, son. The seed of worry blossomed into a huge flower of worry. That was a good job. Eddie only hit the mochi maybe 7 times. Eddie smiled. Wow, so that's what his face looked like when he was happy. His face went back to his usual scowl when Dad tapped my shoulder and said, Your turn, Jasmine. My turn. Chapter 11. All right, so Miss B is going to read chapter 11 and 12, and then I'll be back to finish out the Mochi Queen with you for chapter 13. Have a great day, friends. Learn a lot. Bye.